when Rory McIlroy raised his middle finger to the Bethpage Black crowd during the 2025 Ryder Cup. He created one of the most controversial moments in golf history. The gesture came after Europe's stunning victory on American soil, a win most experts thought was impossible. But that single act of defiance split the sports world down the middle and sparked a debate that reveals something deeper about where we are as a society. Some called McIlroy a hero, standing up to abuse. Others labeled him a hypocrite who sank to the crowd's level. The real story is not about who was right or wrong. It is about why we cannot agree on what happened and what that divide says about the changing face of professional sports. The incident itself was brief but unforgettable. On Friday afternoon at the 11th green, after hours of relentless heckling, McIlroy walked off the green and flipped off the crowd. The image spread instantly. By Saturday, the atmosphere had grown even more toxic. The tournament's own master of ceremonies led a profane chant against McIlroy over the loudspeakers. Fans shouted vulgar insults during his backswing. Someone threw a beer that hit his wife's hat. McIlroy responded by yelling at hecklers to shut up, then immediately hit perfect shots. He later described these moments as very satisfying. When Europe clinched the trophy on Sunday, McIlroy stood at his post-match press conference and delivered what some called a manifesto for golf's soul. He said the fan behavior was unacceptable and abusive, and that golf should be held to a higher standard than what was seen that week. That press conference created two opposing camps. One side saw a brave athlete finally speaking truth to power after enduring personal attacks, xenophobic slurs, and homophobic comments. The other side saw a player who cursed at paying customers, then had the audacity to lecture everyone about civility. And here is where it gets interesting. Both sides were looking at the exact same facts, but seeing completely different stories. The defenders of McIlroy pointed to the documented evidence of what happened at Bethpage. Journalists from multiple outlets described the scene as disgraceful and shameful. Reporters witnessed fans shouting homophobic slurs that could not be printed. People made constant references to McIlroy's most painful professional failure, his missed putt at the 2024 US Open. They made personal attacks about his wife and private life. They hurled derogatory comments about his height and stature. His playing partner, Shane Lowry, faced repeated insults about his weight. The abuse included cheap shots dripping with Irish stereotypes. Most seriously, fans deliberately shouted during pre-shot routines, forcing players to step away from their balls. This broke golf's most sacred rule of etiquette. One observer noted that the line between partisan support and personal vitriol was not merely crossed, but trampled, stomped, and left for dead. To this group, McIlroy's reaction was not only understandable but necessary. They argued he was a human being subjected to workplace harassment that would be illegal in any other profession. The official Ryder Cup Code of Conduct explicitly forbids abusive, obscene, or discriminatory language and the intentional distraction of players. Yet the organization did almost nothing to enforce it in real time. When McIlroy finally snapped, defenders say he was reclaiming his dignity. Sports psychology research shows that for elite athletes performing well-learned tasks, confronting a distraction and channeling the resulting anger can actually improve performance. McIlroy proved this by hitting crucial shots immediately after his confrontations. His defenders celebrated him for refusing to be a passive victim, especially after his failed experiment with stoicism at the 2021 Ryder Cup left him emotionally disconnected and in tears after a crushing defeat. Before we go further, let me know in the comments which side of this debate you fall on. Do you think McIlroy was justified, or did he cross a line himself? And while you are down there, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss our next deep dive into sports controversies that divide the world. But the critics saw something entirely different. They focused on what they called McIlroy's double standard. Former US Ryder Cup captain Paul Azinger captured this view perfectly when he said a player cannot call for civility while also using profanity to confront the crowd. The criticism went like this. McIlroy gave fans the finger on Friday, told them to shut the F up on Saturday, then stood at a microphone on Sunday and lectured everyone about golf needing to be held to a higher standard. To his critics, this was not brave. It was hypocritical. They pointed out that McIlroy has a documented history of letting crowds get under his skin. At the 2016 Ryder Cup at Hazeltine, he admitted he probably engaged too much with hostile fans, even stopping play to have someone ejected. At Whistling Straits in 2021, he overcorrected by going completely stoic and performed terribly. Now at Bethpage, critics said he still had not found the right balance. He claimed to be weaponizing his anger, but to them it just looked like losing his temper. The critics also questioned the severity of the abuse. U.S. Captain Keegan Bradley repeatedly described the crowd as passionate, not abusive. The PGA of America president initially compared the behavior to what you might hear at a youth soccer game, suggesting it was not that bad. Some pointed out that rowdy crowds are part of home field advantage in team sports. The Ryder Cup markets itself on passion and atmosphere. Fans pay significant money to attend, and part of what they are buying is the right to cheer loudly for their team. To this group, McIlroy and the European team were being overly sensitive. The website Barstool Barstool Sports even published a tongue-in-cheek article calling for McIlroy's disqualification for his middle finger gesture. While clearly not serious, it reflected a real sentiment among some fans that the player's reaction was more offensive than the crowd's behavior. Then there is the question of precedent. Golf has an inconsistent history with player discipline. The Korean PGA Tour once issued a 3-year ban to golfer Bio Kim for giving a fan the middle finger after the fan's camera clicked during his backswing. But on the PGA and European tours, Sergio Garcia famously gave fans the middle finger at Bethpage Black during the 2002 US Open and received no punishment. Players regularly throw clubs and yell obscenities with little consequence. Critics argued that if McIlroy faced no punishment for his actions, it proved there is no real standard. And if there is no standard for players, why should fans be held to one? What makes this debate so revealing is that it mirrors larger cultural divisions. One detailed analysis in The Guardian connected the Bethpage crowd to a broader American political culture that now lives in all caps, where volume is mistaken for virtue. The presence of former President Donald Trump on Friday, with galleries dotted with MAGA hats, added a distinct political undercurrent. Some observers described a politics of humiliation at work, where the goal became inflicting misery on opponents rather than celebrating your own team. McIlroy himself noticed this shift, questioning why he heard so many shouts against him but so few for his opponent Scottie Scheffler. This transformation from supporting your team to performatively attacking the other side felt familiar to anyone watching modern politics or social media. The institutional response only deepened the divide. The PGA of America's handling of the crisis was a 3-stage disaster. First, they were oddly silent as the chaos reached its peak on Saturday. A handful of fans were ejected, and spectator etiquette warnings appeared on video boards, only to be loudly booed. Second, the initial comments from PGA President Don Ria downplayed the vitriol by comparing it to a youth soccer game and falsely claiming European fans behaved the same way in Rome. European players called this comparison offensive. Third, after days of public backlash, the organization finally issued belated apologies. CEO Derek Sprague announced he would personally apologize to the McIlroys. Ria sent an email to PGA members saying they certainly own this bogey, but the damage was done. To one group, this proved the organization enabled the abuse through negligence. To the other group, it showed a weak institution caving to manufactured outrage. The most compelling voice in all of this came from American golf legend Tom Watson. The 2-time Ryder Cup captain and 8-time major winner issued a public apology, stating he was ashamed as a former player, captain, and American of what happened. Watson's statement carried weight because it came from someone with no agenda, someone who represented golf's traditional values. Yet even his apology did not settle the debate. Some praised him for moral clarity. Others thought he was overreacting to normal fan behavior. This is where the Bethpage incident becomes a mirror for sports in 2025. The debate is not really about whether McIlroy should have raised his middle finger. It is about two incompatible views of what sports should be. One side believes in traditional codes of conduct, mutual respect, and the idea that some lines should never be crossed no matter how competitive the environment. The other side believes in raw, unfiltered passion, in psychological warfare as part of competition, and in athletes needing to develop thick skin. One side sees the Ryder Cup turning into a toxic spectacle that betrays golf's core identity. The other side sees it evolving into must-watch entertainment that finally gives golf the mainstream attention it deserves. Both sides can point to evidence supporting their view. Up to 35% of elite athletes suffer from a mental health crisis, and sustained psychological abuse is a known contributing factor. That supports the defenders. But the history of sports is filled with hostile crowds and athletes who found ways to channel that energy productively. That supports the critics. The Ryder Cup has explicit rules against the behavior witnessed at Bethpage, but those rules are inconsistently enforced and always have been. McIlroy was subjected to documented bigotry and harassment, but he also admitted to being very satisfied by confronting hecklers, which suggests he was not purely a victim, but an active participant in the battle. The truth is that both narratives contain elements of reality. McIlroy was genuinely subjected to abuse that crossed multiple lines, and he also responded in ways that were unprofessional by the standards he himself articulated. The crowd was genuinely out of control in ways that shamed American golf, and they were also reacting to a lopsided competition where their team was being embarrassed. The PGA of America genuinely failed to maintain order, and they also operate in a commercial environment where rowdy atmospheres sell tickets and television rights. What the Bethpage divide reveals is that we no longer have shared standards for evaluating behavior in high-stakes public public settings. The same event can be seen as either a courageous stand against abuse or a hypocritical meltdown, depending entirely on which values you prioritize. Are athletes workers who deserve protection from harassment, or are they highly paid performers who must accept hostility as part of the job? Is passionate fandom about supporting your team, or is it about psychologically destroying the opponent? Should institutions prioritize tradition and decorum, or excitement and revenue? These questions have no easy answers, which is exactly why the McIlroy incident continues to generate such intense disagreement. In the end, Europe won the trophy through skill and resilience. McIlroy finished with a strong individual record, but the larger battle for the character of the sport remains undecided. If you found this analysis helpful, smash that like button and subscribe for more sports deep dives. And let me know in the comments where you stand. Was McIlroy a hero or a hypocrite? Your answer says more about you than you might think.